Welcome to Vamos, presented by Degree. It is a Canadian men's national team match day, and Oliver Platt, Jordan Wilson, and yours truly are here to tee it up for you. It was not a good showing at the Copa America last night, once again, for CONCACAF. A pair of results in Group D, I believe it was Paraguay 1, Brazil 4, and Colombia 3, and Costa Rica 0. The tournament is starting to take more and more of a shape and a clearer look of what the knockout rounds could end up envisioning. So let's take a moment to begin the show with a look at Group A's standings heading into this final match day for Group A. Tonight from 8 p.m. Eastern Time, Argentina and Peru. And then the match that we are all waiting for, Canada and Chile, to see who will advance to play more certainly than not, the first place team from Group B as the 2A seed. It is a 7 p.m. Central Time kickoff. Before I get into some thoughts from the boys, Christian Jack, as we know, is live for us in Orlando, and who better to set the scene than KJ?
Hello everybody from Orlando, Florida, the home of the Magic Kingdom and of course Orlando Magic of the NBA. On Saturday night, Canada will be looking for their own magic as they look to qualify from the Copa America group and reach the quarterfinals. Standing in their way is a Chile side who have yet to score in this competition, who have won just one of their last 8 competitive games and sit 8th out of 10 in current South American World Cup qualifying. Some would say they are due a good performance. Others would argue they are vulnerable. Here is what we do know. Chile will bring a blend of what we have already seen in Argentina and Peru. They are clearly not as gifted as the world champions, but they express real technical quality, power, and pace. Jesse Marsch said today they must reduce the amount of times they get space. Chile certainly go through the gears a lot quicker than Peru, but they also have the savviness and experience that we saw from the Peruvians in Kansas City. Now, you probably don't remember what you were doing on this day 14 years ago. Chileans Claudio Bravo, Mauricio Isla, and Alexis Sanchez certainly do. On June 28, 2010, they were playing Brazil in a last 16 World Cup match in Johannesburg. Yet all three are here in Orlando to face the likes of Jonathan David and Alphonso Davies. Both 10 at the time, by the way. In fact, every player for Canada was entering their last week of school back on that day in 2010. Now they face a different lesson in what is arguably the biggest match of 2024, and arguably one of the biggest in history. We have certainly said that a lot lately with this team, who continue to march proudly into uncharted territory. From Georgia to Kansas and now to Florida, heat has followed this team around. Yet so far, they have kept their cool in all of their elements. This has been a disciplined and mature approach from Canada. Controlling emotions and managing them well are signs of real development. Now, for the third time in 10 days, they are asked to go again, to continue to carve their identity under Jesse Marsch, who has personally invested time into real relationship building this month and coaching these players. Some who have special moments here in Orlando. Kyle Larin talked to me this week about scoring the first ever goal in this stadium when he played here in MLS. And Stefan Eustáquio made his Canada debut here in 2019. Boy, how we are thankful for that moment. The squad returned to their resort hotel after their final training session here and were met by hundreds of youth gymnasts staying at the same resort looking for their own personal athletic glory before their trip to Disney World here on the weekend. Orlando. It's where dreams come true. Canada will certainly be hoping for theirs on Saturday night.
Our thanks to Christian Jack, who color coordinated for his hit. You can tell how excited he is. There's a lot of very good things from that scene set that I like to pick on. And of course, some more important questions, but I've been thinking since KJ asked the question, where were you 14 years ago? I was watching the World Cup in Monsieur Morjeski's homeroom class as a grade 8 student. Ollie, where were you on that day?
I was 18 years old, so I couldn't tell you where I was. I guess I was finishing up high school doing absolutely nothing of interest or importance.
Jordan Wilson?
It's training in the summer, I believe. This 2010?
Yep.
Yeah, training. I think it was in Chicago. I went to school in Michigan, but yeah, just obviously on the grind, footy first. But it's crazy when you put things into perspective like this, right? How many years and just where Canada has come in that short time.
Footy first, as always, Jordan Wilson becoming an expert at the craft. A good segue back to the heart of the matter here, Ollie. So this is it. Canada can punch their ticket to the knockout round tonight. What would this mean for the program? And if they don't advance, could it be seen as a failure for this program?
Yeah, well, firstly, it would what it would mean is it would mean making the Copa America knockout stage. Like, I don't need to do bigger declarations about what it means for the program than that. That is the end in itself that's on the line for Canada tonight. Would it be a failure if they don't do it? I think it depends on what we see tonight. I think whenever you go into a game like this, it's very easy to come up with a long list of reasons why they can't do it, or a list of excuses, if you want to put it that way. This Chile team is incredibly experienced, as KJ covered. Ricardo Gareca is one of the top coaches in South America. Jesse Marsh has had very little time with this group. The weather's going to be very hot again and difficult to play in. Like, you can make a long list of finding reasons why it won't happen for Canada. But I prefer to just kind of strip this down and simplify it. And I know when I look at this group of players, and I think it is about the players first and foremost, I've seen enough of them to know that they can play better than they did against Peru. And I think if they do that tonight and they play close to their full potential, they're going to have a really, really good chance of getting the result they need, which is almost certainly only going to be a draw to get through this group and into the knockout stage. If they're unable to do that, there is no doubt that there is going to be a lot of regret, and it's going to be a major missed opportunity for this team. So yes, in that sense, I do think it will be a failure, particularly when you look at the circumstances they've been handed here. As much as Canada's in a little bit of transition with a new coach, so is Chile, so is Peru. And then you look at that potential quarterfinal opponent, and it wouldn't be Brazil, it wouldn't be Uruguay, it wouldn't be Argentina, it wouldn't be Colombia. It's a big moment for this team for sure, and I'm just hoping that we see them play the way that we know they can play, and I think that'll be enough.
Yeah, it's a great point, Ollie. Depending on what happens tomorrow in Arizona and Texas, it's likely to be Venezuela if Canada get through. Jordan, your thoughts on the same question?
This has to be the moment, no, gentlemen? Like, you're looking at the World Cup exit. I didn't expect Canada to make it out of that group. Two of those teams end up going to the semifinal in the World Cup. Nations League final, that always favored the US. And then a big moment where Canada, for me, it was a nice moment for them to get hardware. But going against the States and the way they went into that match and the way they couldn't adapt or have a plan B, it was fair to give it to the Americans. But tonight, Chile, you already won against Peru where you didn't play your best. You've been going against top competition for the past 3 weeks. You've unified as a group. And now you're going into the match. You're obviously not going to play for a tie, but as Ollie alluded to, a tie will probably do it for you to go into the knockout stages of the second biggest tournament in the world. Yes, I know it's Euros, but obviously we can never qualify for that. For us, it's Copa, right? Copa or World Cup. This has to feel like the moment for the squad. In terms of feeling like it's a failure, I mean, it's expectation of who you talk to. For these guys and players, I think for them it would feel like failure because they've always wanted a tournament and competition where they're playing against people that could burn them and hurt them. And then now to go and do that, if they can do it tonight, they're gonna feel very excited, very accomplished that they've done it in such a short time. We're looking at it as a short time because we're looking under the Jesse Marsh era, but the core of this group have believed for a very long time that they could knock ball with the best of them. So I think for them, not getting over the line is a failure. I think if you're looking at Jesse Marsh, I think you can only really speak about him in good terms right now because he's gotten everyone on the same page. There was a lot of turmoil with his team as of late, year and a half. But for them to go now and be in a position, if you can hear my son wailing in the background, I think he bumped his head. This has to be a time where they get over the line. I think they could do it, and you got to feel watching this team that this is the moment. No doubt.
Wilson Jr. also famously fired up for tonight's match, as is Jesse Marsh, who himself proclaimed that he and KJ should begin to call their bit between two ferns, a la Zach Galifianakis, and I'm not opposed to that. Let's hear more from the Canadian gaffer.
Chile is a little bit of a combination of Peru and Argentina. They have the savviness and they have the combativeness, but they also have the quality and they have the experience. So it will be a blend, I think, of those two matches. And we'll have to understand that we have to be strong and combative and clever, but we'll have to also handle some of their individual quality and brilliance and their ability to play with each other. So it becomes a mentality game in terms of understanding the duels and the combativeness, but it also an intelligent tactical game in terms of understanding what they're trying to accomplish and then trying to tilt the game in our favor more and more.
I know the scorelines have gone well for you in other games, but I would imagine that the plan is to go out there and win the game. There's no thought of trying to draw at this point.
Yeah, look, Peru could still beat Argentina and a draw might not be enough.
Right.
So for sure, we're going to go into the game. We're going to keep things disciplined and make sure we're compact and that we're not giving much away. And then we're going to play to our strengths, which is our aggressiveness, our ability to press, our ability in transition, also our ability on the ball and to be a good possession team and then good counter-pressing team. So we're going to keep trying to build in the identity of what we want to see and now put it to practice against another good opponent and in a very relevant situation for us in terms of what this tournament is.
Well, the Canadian gaffer outlining the situations perfectly. The draw is something you never want to try and play for. Might not be enough if in a world Peru is able to go on and beat Argentina, which I quickly want to raise the fact that I heard a stat on Football Americas yesterday that Lionel Messi has not won a tackle or made an interception all tournament long. Further to that, he's likely not to play tonight just as they try to rest him up towards the knockouts. Jordan, with Jesse Marsch, I think everyone understands how early this is in his tenure. I think with any coach, and not to discredit the experience of Jesse Marsch, because he is a vastly experienced coach, the temptation I'm sure can be there to throw something completely brand new at your opposition, try to catch them off guard. You heard him speak about the tactical battle being a big part of this, and ultimately that is the biggest thing that he and his staff can do is prepare this starting 11. So I'll ask you to put your Jesse Marsch cap on and either give him some advice or try to imagine what he's thinking of and present to us and to the audience what you think the starting 11 should be tonight.
Jesse Marsch, that number one role is never easy. I would love to be a number 2 or even number 3 because you can just whisper in the room, right? And say what it is that needs to be said. But then you really don't take the onus on if it's good or bad. If it's good, you're like, yeah, I remember I was the one that said it. If it's bad, you're like, whoa, I'm not number 1. I think I'd whisper to Jesse Marsch, not that he needs my advice, but to stick to what you know. It's been a short time and stick to what has worked. And yes, maybe there hasn't been results in terms of goals and winning matches, but I'm going to go with a lineup that was the same lineup against Argentina. I think that there's the most balance in the side when you play that way. Miller and Davies connecting on that left side going forward, but then they're just robust and strong. And hopefully you can get a bit of Tejan Buchanan showing his work going forward on the right-hand side. But you have your 2 killers up front, David and Laird. We saw with the 1 goal that they've scored in the past 4 games, what they could do, right? With David just guessing and gambling and Laird playing that pass to Schaffberg and getting things going. Like, this is what you want. And then with that back 5, including Crepeau, like, this is the strongest one for me that we've seen as of late. So I think with a manager, it's like, how much do you change and when do you change? And sometimes it's you want to take your team to another level. But for me, Ollie, sometimes it's just about riding the wave and doing what has been working. And then maybe when you get them in another camp, or maybe when you get them with more time, you can really put a different spin on things. But for now, I'd go back to basics and keep it simple for this match.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think I do think it's the most difficult to predict lineup of his tenure so far. Obviously, he did then make kind of unexpected changes against Peru, but I think there was kind of consensus going into that game what the team would look like. I'm a big believer in these types of games, in international football in particular. You put your faith in your best players. So I do think Tejan Buchanan should come back into the side. I think he hasn't played to his potential under Jesse Marsch so far, but I think you have to trust him and bring him back into this team. The worry for me is the wide areas. We saw it exploited a little bit against Peru. I think Chile have the potential to do it as well. We saw it against the Netherlands too. Or at times with this Canada side, when they play in that shape, I think because the attacking wide players, sometimes they're not really even wide players. They get quite high and quite narrow in that 4-2-2-2. and it can leave the fullbacks a little bit isolated. I thought Richie Larea had a tough time of it in that first half against Peru. So does he consider potentially starting with the back five that he changed to in that Peru game? Does he go back to the back four? I think that's a little bit up for debate. But the good thing about this Canada team and players like Buchanan and Davies and Johnston is that you can kind of swap between the two different systems quite easily as you see fit during the game. So I'm with Jordan. I think I'd go with that team.
Three things stand out to me from that chat and from that graphic in no particular order of importance. Number one, Jordan Wilson's beanie. Number two, Ishmael Kone with the Olympique Marseille logo for the first time instead of Watford's
Crazy.
moose. And number
Wow.
three, the fact that Jacob Schaffelberg wasn't on it, considering how much buzz he has generated lately about
Well
does he
deserved.
get a start? Is he a super sub or a fantastic finisher? Christian Jack asked him that very question about his role on this team.
Christian Jack alongside Jacob Schaffelberg here in Orlando, Florida. You just told me you've been watching me when you were a kid.
Yeah, for the footy show was my favorite show growing up. So
right.
I'm mad at the score for ending that a while ago, but it was my favorite show.
I love that. It makes me feel old, but then again, I am. You're not a kid anymore, and I'm having a pleasure of interviewing you because you're starring right now on the world stage and starring for your country in Copa America. Is it sunk in, like the difference that you're making getting on the pitch and just showing people what you can do?
Not really. I mean, I feel like I try to keep myself at a level-minded kind of mentality and pace throughout my career. So I try not to get too high up on the good moments or too low on the bad moments. So it's been a lot of fun to make a difference for the team finally. Because I've been coming, I think I saw on Facebook when the memories pop up. I think it was like 4 years ago today that I made my debut, I think, for Canada. So to kind of go from that one to now making like a serious impact with the team is cool.
2 games in and 2 big-time appearances from you, difference-making right off the bench, one on the right, one on the left. But when you go in at halftime and you've had the manager talk to you, and you know, how keen are you to make an instant impact, Jacob? Because it's not like starting; like you've got to make an impact pretty quickly.
I think I'm gonna be honest, like the style of play just kind of fits me.
Yeah.
He tells me just get in and run in behind. So I mean, to say less, that's all I want to do in general. So it's right up my alley. So it's easier for me to make a difference with the style of play rather than a very possession-based team, slow approach.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess it's just been luck of the draw for me this tournament.
Lots to like from that interview, Jordan, including Jacob Schaffelberg saying, say less in this hypothetical to Jesse Marsh, which is just something that I want to be true so incredibly badly. When we think about his role as the super sub or an impact starter down the road, I think Jacob did exactly what he should have done. The media training is clearly paying off, but I also think he's just so humble and so honest that he believes right now he's in a good spot coming in and running and finishing matches and contributing to this national team. Whether or not you agree with where he is right now or what his role is right now, Jordan, when you think about the future for him with this program, do you think he can continue to develop, perhaps make a bigger move across the pond and transition to more of a starting type of player?
I do think that he has potential and that he could move on or step into a role, and I think he'll start games for Canada. I don't think he should start tonight, but I think going forward in the future, he'll get his moments. But the word that you said that stood out to me was humility, and that's what he brings when he comes off of the bench, right? He's blessed to be there. I mean, every player when they play, and even this time against the Americans, it's just like one thing's on his mind, and that's to make a difference, make an impact, but not in a selfish way. Not like this is going to be all about me. He literally wants to do it for his country. He wants to do it for his team. And every time he comes off that bench, you could see that he's chomping at the bit. It's almost like U12 football where you have only 30 minutes right before you got to go and your parents got to take you back. You're like, I want to make the most out of this. I'm going to be running, tackling, doing all that he can. And that is what Schaffelberg brings. I think what he needs to improve on when we watch him is just his defensive positioning. Granted, he's coming in at the end of games where I think Canada, it's just a bit more open when they play. So there's not that much onus on being in the right position defensively. But I think moving forward, there's a difference between the first 15 of a game and between the 75th and the 90th, right? I think he just needs to be a bit more locked into his position, but that comes with also being in those type of situations in those positions. I think his versatility, he's admitted in interviews as well, he's not the best at coming inside, being in that pocket, playing back to goal. And I think it's just trying those things sometimes. Of course, his X factor is his speed, the way that he goes in behind, and the way that he just wants to be on that left foot. But I also think if you want to move on, maybe make a move across the pond, it's being able to switch it up. Everyone has their strengths. And I'll just quickly land with this. If someone told me I'm going to pay you $1 million, Jordan Wilson, to go and play the number 10, I would gladly give it back to them, because I would say no chance. That doesn't really bring out what I like to do. But you still have to have moments where you go forward or you contribute in some way. I think with Schaffberg, you're seeing that. He's a guy that loves to go down the wing, but I think to get the most out of him or maybe push him to the next level is to challenge him in the pocket, finding the defensive positioning. So he still has work to do, but I love the way that he's approaching the game and play.
Just for the record, I would not turn down $1 million to play as the number 10. I'd just fail. I'd stink the place up every week and pocket my money. Yeah, no problem. You're a better man than me. Like, I neglected to mention Jacob Schaffelberg when we talked about the starting lineup there. I'll chalk that down to Saturday morning and not just me being bad at my job. But it's a massive decision coming into this game.
Yeah.
Jesse Marsh, I think, has to be tempted to play him from the start, whether that's for Miller, whether it's for Buchanan, or leaving Buchanan out. It would be Larrea, obviously, that would be coming out of the team. It's a really big decision for Marsh to make, because you heard Schaffelberg say it there. He does just seem to fit the way that Jesse Marsh wants to play and what he gives them. I think that some of the other players have the potential to give Jesse Marsh, but maybe because they're a bit more prominent, high-profile players, they feel the need to get more involved and get on the ball more. Schaffelberg will just make off-the-ball runs. He'll get in behinds. He'll get wides. He doesn't need a ton of touches. And I think that at times can add a nice balance for Canada and bring out the best of some of the players around him. So it's definitely one of the big decisions that Jesse Marsh will have to make tonight.
And Jenko, if I were to ask you, you watch all the games, you're so involved with Canadian football. You've come such a long way, my friend. You are a footy man now, and not rugby footy. You are footy.
Both.
I say just one person.
Both.
If there's one person that has benefited the most from Jesse Marsh coming to this team, I think it'd be unanimous what people say. Of course, you can say Cornelius and maybe Crepeau, but in terms of like the way that they play, it has to be Schaffelberg. No, the way that he goes about his football, the way that he's direct, the way that Marsh could maybe form him into a different type of player. It has to be him, just from his raw athleticism. No.
It's the same argument you make, or you could make, about him staying as a finisher. Is if you want that sort of unbridled speed and energy, tire out some of the Chileans tonight and let them go for 60 minutes or 70 minutes, depending on what your match plan might be. And if it doesn't work, yeah, you lose the opportunity to bring him in late. But I know it's how much do you want to experiment in one of the most important matches that the program's seen in a long time. But listen, I'd be incredibly, incredibly tempted to give him a run, if only for Kings County, Nova Scotia to register on the Richter scale tonight, if it happens. Either way, I'm sure Jacob Schaffelberg's name will be called by Luke Weilman at some point this evening. A player that we haven't spoken as much about this tournament, and for that reason, you have to think it's because his strike partner has the goal. It's because perhaps he's been quiet at times, but it is Kyle Larin who I would like to speak to first. And I think everyone is well versed on his history and his ability to deliver for Canada on the biggest stage, except maybe Kyle Larin, as he found out through Christian Jack.
Your record when you score goals, the Canada's record is phenomenal. I'm not sure if you're aware of this.
No, I'm not sure.
Do you know how many games Canada have lost in games you've scored?
If I can, I don't know.
No?
Maybe one?
Never.
Never really.
Yeah. 21 wins, 2 draws, no losses when you score for Canada.
Wow.
Yeah. How does that make you feel?
I didn't know that, but no, it makes me feel good that when I score, we don't lose. But now I'm thinking if I don't score, we're gonna lose. You know?
Well, let's focus on the positive. Like when you get the goals, Canada don't lose.
No, that's a good record to have. Obviously, I want to score every game, and sometimes I don't. But I know the work I'm doing in the game for the team is important. You know,
For sure.
Yeah.
So if Kyle Larin drops a stinker tonight, everyone can talk to Christian Jack about planting that seed of immense pressure for Kyle Larin, who, again, Ollie mentioned earlier about being Schaffelberg being a better man than me. Larin a better man than me for A, I would find a way to know that stat, and B, if I didn't, I would react much more confidently than Kyle Larin did.
I'm that
also
guy.
plays
Yeah.
the humble ace card in that situation. He's a candidate for the next question for you, gentlemen, Ollie, and you could go off the board. I wouldn't hold it against you. But when it comes to players that need to step up or have the biggest impact tonight for Canada to get the result they need, who would you nominate?
I'm going to be really boring and say Alphonso Davies, because he's Canada's captain and best player, and this is one of the biggest games that he's played for Canada. And so, look, I think there's an onus on Jesse Marsch for sure as the head coach to put Fonzie in a position to succeed tonight and to get the best out of him. I don't think we necessarily saw that. We definitely didn't see that against Peru. But at the same time, I think Alphonso Davies has played enough big games and is experienced enough as a player to know that no one really remembers that, right? No one really remembers the tactical nuances and, what position you played and whether or not maybe the circumstances were there for you to have your best game. You've just got to perform. You've got to play like a big player and like a leader, and find a way to impact this game while also not making it just about you and ensuring you're still playing for the team and playing within the game plan. So Chile has a right back, Mauricio Isla, who's had a great career. He's a very, very good player, but he's 36 years old. And if Canada can get Davies running at him on a regular basis, I think they're going to have some joy tonight.
Jordan, your thoughts?
Ollie's so right. That balance is key with Davies, and I think we've seen more of it as of late under Jesse Marsch, just putting in those performances that when you're one of the best players on the pitch, but then find that balance to give what the team needs. And I think that's just been crucial for him as he's played for Canada. For me, I'm going with Jonathan David. I say this because not just because he was the guy to score that goal, and probably there aren't many people who would have done it the same way he did. Like the 3 touches he took, the one to control and kind of take the sting out of Schaffelberg's pass, the next to put him in that perfect position and that perfect angle to have that last shot for the third one. He's that guy in front of goal. I know Larin's dangerous, but when I'm just putting everything on the line when I look at Canada and the way that Jesse Marsch has him defending well and getting into certain opportunities, but in terms of going forward, there hasn't been a plethora of opportunities. You're going to need 1, maybe 2 to go put Chile away. And David, if he's on the end of that, he could be that hero and that guy. So for me, I think he needs to be the big dog tonight. And he's the one that I wouldn't even say step up, just continue to be how he's been and just a little bit more ruthless in front of goal. Maybe not passing that one, maybe just being the guy to have that shot, which is hard to say, right? If someone's wide open and he doesn't pass, it's like, okay, what are you doing? But I just want him to be a bit more selfish in front of goal because he's that great in front of goal that we need him to be that.
2 minutes left in the program. I'll come back to Jordan Wilson next. We mentioned it earlier on the graphics, seeing the blue M beside Ismail Kone's name and Dwa Obu listed under that crest for Ismail Kone. Just how unorthodox of a jump do you think this will be for him when we see him suiting up at the nearly 70,000 seat Stade Velodrome next season?
I mean, I want Ismail Kone when he comes out and then he talks about his move, just to tell any young kid as well, like the low points of this, right? Just being unseen and the work that he's had to put in to go from CS Saint Laurent to CF Montreal, like all these little things and the setbacks. Everyone loves a good story and all the hype right now, and that's what people are going to focus on. Oh, if you train hard in your backyard when you're 17, you can go and play for Marseille. This guy has grinded and worked and has waited for his time, and now he's taking it. But you look at Canadians, whenever you see them linked with big clubs that I said the other day, like Benzema, Lacazette, like we go down a list of players that have played for Marseille, and you have Ismail Kone there at the tender age of 22. This is such a feel-good story. I think he deserves it.
Ollie?
Yeah, amazing story, amazing talent. I think this kind of move for him was beginning to become inevitable just based on the ability of the player. But undoubtedly, I think this has got to be accelerated by the way he played against France and now going to one of France's biggest clubs. And that, I think, just shows you how much that platform of playing for Canada, we saw it with Tejan, we saw it with Alistair Johnston. It can really move things forward quickly for you.
I'm excited to see what type of impact Ismail Kone and the rest of the Canadians can have tonight against Chile. A 6 p.m. Mountain Time kickoff in Orlando, Florida for the match. And do not forget, immediately, and I do mean immediately, the whistle blows and then we're on YouTube for a live post-game reaction show, of course presented by Degree. We will see you then. Vamos, Canada.
Come on!
Thank you, Ollie. Enjoy the match.